Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, a global discussion where we answer your questions on media production. Jason, let's get into the first question.
Sure. Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, anyone tried OpenAI Sora generative AI video? The quality is very impressive, and he includes the web link.
Go ahead, Ken.
No one can try it yet unless you work for OpenAI or on the red team or one of the happy few creators who have been given early access. The only way you could have tried it was by asking Sam Altman a question live, and he was then putting that into the new Sora and then putting out results. Mainly, I think, to show that, one, to take all the energy away from Google's announcement of Gemini 1.5, but also to show that it wasn't just cherry-picked, the videos that you saw on there, to show that, no, this is straight from the source without editing. So,
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Ken. That was a good demonstration, which I watched some pieces of to demonstrate that, no, it wasn't a parlor trick and it wasn't selective choosing. And I think the results of it are quite amazing when you look at the comparison that Marcus Brownlee did, and which I think CJ has some examples of coming up probably, of the difference where we were with video generation just a year ago versus what it is right now with Sora. It's an amazing stride that's been taken in video generation. And right now it can generate up to a minute, I think, of video, and before it was limited to just a few seconds. So the progression between last year and this year is, a hockey stick upwards. And so I can imagine what it'll be like next year. I think we're moving very quickly toward general AI. And if we can, manage the guardrails carefully, but with the guardrails removed, I'm wondering, what can it do? It's hard to tell.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that I think it's really impressive. I think it was, I think that I use Midjourney and ChatGPT every day, probably a cumulative, maybe a half an hour a day. So I definitely have a lot of interaction with it, not as much as Ken, but a fair bit of it. And I think sometimes the hyperbole around it gets caught up and people get worried about it in a way that I think that for what I use it for basically, for me, Ken uses it for much more real things. I use it for what I would consider usually disposable content. So my Midjourney stuff is stuff that I'm using as conceptual stuff. I use it in my presentations. I use it in, a lot of other things that are not, I'm not worried about copyright. I'm not worried about building it and everything else. And part of the reason for that is that I think that what you end up with is very impressive. What you don't have is positive control over a long period of time. So you get a shot like the one that CJ is showing right now, or some of these shots. These are very, very impressive. But if you needed them to be a certain way for a movie and have to do a whole movie this way, I think you'd find it to be much more challenging because the problem is that you can't consistently get enough shots together that would, humans have a hard enough you look at the number of movies that come out and the number of them that make money, humans have a hard time doing this well. And so, I think that it's going to take a little longer, because I think that when people go on Twitter and say, oh, this is the end of media or end of producers or end of these things, I think that it is probably not. I do think there was someone who said on Twitter, I just read this morning, it said that, the last bastion of defense is taste. And I do think that is the case, where you have, is that having good taste is really what sets it apart. You can look at, as I'll look at something and I'm looking for something in Midjourney, and I'll dig in there and produce, I don't know, in a half an hour, maybe 1,000 images, just building on all of those things. And then I'll get the one image that I was looking for, but it's still a half an hour spent doing that is shorter than the weeks that it would have taken me to build it some other way. But I think that I think that there's still a long way to go. And I think that what we'll find is that we get a lot of what I think as someone who worked in previs and films and everything else, I'll say for pre-visualization and conceptual work, this is a game changer. It is It is unbelievable being able to pitch a movie and be able to have a handful of concepts and a handful of things that you want to show someone that gets them excited about your movie. And, you go through that. This is going to be huge, for that. I think you're still going to actually shoot the movie. The grandmother here that they're showing is a good example of what's wrong with AI. She looks so possessed. Anyway,
and she blows out the candles and they don't go out.
But I think that for conceptual work, and because I use it a lot for conceptualization, so I use it for I'm thinking about an idea and I'm going to ask Midjourney for it, and it helps me think. I'm not going to use anything that Midjourney created, but it helps me think about ideas. That it'll come up with things that I just would have never thought of. And so anyway, so that's so I'm not as worried about it, I think, as a lot of people are. And I think it is an incredible tools that can be harnessed by someone who knows what they're doing, like Ken, who's going to talk here after me. But I think that there's still human beings in the middle of a lot of this stuff. I do think that, I've said this before, that if you're bored with your job, you probably don't have to worry about it because you won't be bored for much longer. So if you're doing a boring job where you're just processing things, this is coming, and so you really have to be on the front edge of creating something to be successful here.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just to say, 'cause we actually do use this commercially. We sell the stuff we have high-end clients that we build using generative AI. Now, for me, I've been doing photography since I can remember. So that's so you still need the eye and that creative bent to be able to produce good content from it. We have spent hundreds upon hundreds of hours in terms of refining our prompts to get it so that what we produce, so for our clients, it's not that we put a label on it that this was done with generative AI. It doesn't need to, because once we can export work from it, we then still have to be work on it, and anyone is saying it's kind of, you can just press a button and you've got something out. Still takes a lot of work to kind of get what we want, but we have a 10x increase in our output to it, and our clients love what we do, and it's not, it's like putting a label on saying, oh, well, we did it in Photoshop, or we did use it in Pixelmator, or we used, it's not, it's just a tool. For us, it's just a tool. It's a really powerful tool. We have really trained it and worked on it for hours and hours to get it so it can produce results that we can sell commercially. And that's really where we are with it. I mean, and it's easy to look at this example with the videos. It's easy to pick out the videos where you can obviously see the issues. Being able to get things to conceptually follow on, we've done that already with Midjourney. We can produce artwork that follows on, that keeps the concept, keeps the character, and keeps it on through all the work that we've done. We can't wait to get our hands on with the video. The examples I would say to look at the one where the train reflection in Tokyo. Look at that and point out the bits in that you can see, oh yeah, that's obviously AI. The curve that we're on now with the video side, I was shocked. I had predicted, I think I said it before once in one of the questions, that we would get to this stage this year. It's February, and we're at this stage. So it's as Courtney said, the exponential growth on this is amazing, and we will see. This is just a baby step of what we're seeing now. But as I said, for commercial work, we have already been doing this for months and been selling our work commercially.
Bill?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a pretty big consumer of stock video because we do all of our comping work for our clients, and often those shots that the client has approved that come out of stock video sources go absolutely into the last step, which is the actual final that's broadcast. The thing that's interesting to me, and I'm not sure how it's going to break, is lesser tier clients. I think that the people who shoot with high standards, this stuff that's coming out has that look to it. And I think it'll marry pretty well. And certainly if you have colorists and a big back-end team, they're going to make those shots fit in. What I'm more concerned about is that down at the lower levels, corporate video, industrial video, the kind of stuff that goes out on the web all the time, I may have the same problem, and I'm not judging it in advance. But I have noticed that if I get a really great-looking stock photo and I try to integrate it into what I shot or what a shooting team did, there's just a difference there. And it's not often a difference that can be simply done with color correction and things like that. It's lighting, it's production values. Can I match the work we do at this lower level to something that comes out of a stock service that was done in a much higher level? And I'm interested to see how that works out.
Courtney?
Yeah, Ken brought up some interesting things, some interesting points is, the ability to frame the image and creatively create a point of view can be can be generated artificially if you train everything on Ansel Adams photography, let's say, or someone, famous cinematographer's work. All their, you into your model, you add all the great shots of Emil Sigmund or any of the great cinematographers over the years. It will learn, the model will learn good framing and good lighting and all of the information that makes up something that's great to look at. My fear is that the quest we're talking, Bill's talking about how to monetize this, or how this new creative tool can be used to improve our work and our income. And my fear is that the fight over copyright and legalistic problems of generative AI may kill it. And I'm worried about that. And I think, strangely enough, to be a little more philosophical, I think it's a way of creative people achieving immortality in a way, because their talent that goes into the training of these can then proceed on for an eternity, even long after they're gone. If they don't get too stingy about, I'm not going to let my videos be incorporated. They're not going to steal my videos. But you're limiting your chance at immortality there, folks.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that it is, number one is I will argue that I would never go back to stock photography for most of what I do, because I can actually get way more of what I want from AI than I can get from stock photography. Stock photography is limited to whatever someone shot in that area, but I can sit there and say, well, I see what you shot there, but give me 1,500 new versions of it where I get to add more to the prompt, take things away, move things around, and I get much more of what I'm looking for from AI than I ever got from stock photography. If I'm going to I would go from AI to shooting something myself. And if I was shooting something myself, I would still do hundreds of versions on AI so that I could show the art director that I'm shooting with, or my DP, this is the look I'm going for, but we're going to tweak it a little bit and make it just right. But I think that it's gotten way past that. As far as copyright, I actually think that the arguments about copyright are problematic, and I think that I don't think they're going to win. I think it's there's not zero chance of winning the copyright rules, but I think that the chances are less than 50% that they're going to win that, because it's not really copying what they're doing. It's a derivative work, and the thing is that the idea that you can say that you're making something that isn't based on, we all as artists, I know when I was doing lots of ads, I had an art board of hundreds of other ads that I cut out of Archive magazine. It's literally Archive magazine. It literally has a little thing up the side, because what we would do is we'd cut the things out that we liked, and we'd base what we were doing on the looks and feels of somebody else. Somebody else is doing that, and we're going, oh, I really like the way that looks. And so I would go through that and make it, and think about those things. Even now, if I see someone's got a great design, I immediately screen capture it off of the web, and I put it in this little folder. Like I want to, because I'm thinking about those colors, and I will go down that. I don't see, I guess I think you're going to have a hard time with a jury or a judge seeing the difference between what I'm doing and what AI is doing. And I just think that they're going to have a hard time getting that. And I will say that what's keeping a lot of players out is the concern that Courtney has. If they lose the case, then you're going to see it happen. Like, you're going to see $1 trillion dump into the market in like seconds, and so there's so many people that are kind of half in, half out, because they're waiting for the court cases to kind of work their way through it, because they don't want to take that word exactly what Courtney's talking about. but the chances of losing are very high. I would have taken more time to sue because it's keeping people out is the threat of that legal issue. If they lose, all that's gone. Once people have certainty, the amount of investment will go up by 100x, from what's happening right now. So it'll be really interesting.
We've got a ton of excitement. I think it was only about 1 o'clock Eastern yesterday, so late morning Pacific, that OpenAI put out on their Discord and released all the information about Sora. And so there's a lot of excitement about it. We've got a couple questions lined up about this, and I know that we just talked at length, so we're going to go through these right here. Go ahead, next question.
Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina writes in, OpenAI launched Sora, a text-to-video AI model. Does anyone have access yet? What can be done with it?
Go ahead, Ken.
I think we answered most of this in the previous one. The biggest thing that would be done with this would be the replacement of stock photography. Our clients, the reason they don't like stock photography is because if someone else has used it, or if they want to buy the direct rights to an image, then no one else can use it. It's really exponentially high. So our use of AI and use would be to replace stock photography, mainly because, as I said, for our clients, they don't want something up there representing them that someone else could possibly use. And with AI, that doesn't happen because it's unique what we do and build and create with it. So that's the biggest thing really, is you be able to create original pieces of work that no one else has, and your client's going to be happy with that because they know it's not going to be seen anywhere else.
And go ahead, Chris.
Is it always unique, Ken? I mean, if two people sit down at two computers and type in the exact same prompts, is each output going to be unique?
Yes, it is. It's hard actually trying to get it to be the same. That's been the problem, is in trying to get consistency. Every time you put the exact same prompt in, you'll get a different answer. It's just the way that it works. So actually keeping consistency is where all the work that we have done is in making it consistent so that we can do a storyboard where the character remains the same. That's the hard work. So making it consistent is difficult because it isn't consistent, even if you use exactly the same prompt every time.
And as far as access goes, as of right now, it's been limited to within OpenAI, and they're red teaming it to try and see where the limits are, and then a very select group of creators have been given access to start to play with it.
Didn't you mention something about getting an invite this morning?
Well, I guess I could show it. Yeah, why not? We're going to.
So you actually got an invite that said, "Give Sora a try."
Yeah, we've buried the lead here a little bit, but if I go here to Sora, and then I say create a video about the evolution of technologies, a stock prompt, and so here it goes. I'll need a few details. What I'm going to provide: scene descriptions, characters.
So this is
narration.
A prompt they recommended you try.
Yeah, it's going to start. It's helping me build it right now, kind of like a prompt generator. Okay, let's proceed. Oh, there it is. Darn it.
Okay.
I didn't see it or hear it, though, so it's not technically.
There's a link, evolution of technology. Let's take a look here. Oh. Okay. Next question.
Peter Rosado in Las Vegas, Nevada writes in for Bo's question, MKBHD video on Sora, and then that was for reference.
And hat tip to Marquez Brownlee for putting that together. He did a really nice analysis of it, and that helped us get some of the video that we used earlier in here. So thank you, Marquez. Next question.
Nick in Reno writes in, this is a QR question, thoughts on OpenAI's Project Sora AI video generator, and then another reference link.
All right, Ken?
Yeah, again, I think I've covered it in the previous two answers. But yeah, it is, for us it was, I said, I'm really shocked with AI and what it can do, but I was truly surprised that because I predicted that part of the work that we do is trying to predict and work out where we think is coming for our clients. So I had predicted this year that we'd be seeing something like this, but it's February and we're already seeing it. So yeah, exponential growth is an amazing thing.
Courtney.
And it does look as though they've, as Ken was mentioning, they've solved the problem of consistency from frame to frame, and that you don't see stuff swimming in the background mostly. And they've achieved mostly good spatial relationships. Some of those drone shots from above the car moving through the countryside, look very good. And you see a bush coming up ahead on the road, and that bush remains the same as it goes through, and the perspective changes on it, even though there's no 3D models involved in training. And that stuff would be impossible to do without 3G CGI in the past. Now it can be done with flat video or flat still work even to train the model with. So it's learned a lot about spatial relationships, lighting, and perspective that was not possible before. And with that much, the solving of those problems has led it to this great leap forward in the ability to create believable video that, there's still inconsistencies which they have to solve. Still has some problems with solid things intruding on the same space as each other that shouldn't be able to pass through each other, like the woman whose legs seem to pass through each other as she walks, or the little foxes or whatever they are, coyote cubs that kind of regenerate in a strange fashion, which would make a great science fiction shot. But as soon as they solve a few of those little glitches, I think it will be almost imperceptible between a good stock shot and an AI generated shot.
Next question.
Another QR code question coming in from Guy Cochran in Seattle. What do we think of OpenAI Sora?
Ken?
I revert back to my previous answer.
Got a hot mic, Courtney.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just laughing at the same question 7 times.
It's really amazing how much excitement there is, around the world, and especially within this community of people who are just really bleeding edge on how this stuff gets created. And as time goes on, we're going to get better physics and better understanding of how things work together. It's just, I feel like I'm a spectator on the coolest on the coolest show I've ever seen. But next question.
Paul Walhus in Hot Springs, Arkansas writes in, quote, beautiful snowy Tokyo City is bustling. Amera moves through bustling street is prompted, and the video is spectacular. If this is one of the first AI generated videos, what is in store for us next? And then he has a Wired article.
Yeah, Paul, I think we've gone around the barn enough times on this one today. We appreciate the question. I think the only way is up in terms of how much better this can get. But that's going to close our Sora block. Next question.
Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin writes in, I've received a ProRes 422 movie from a partner, .mov from a partner that plays in QuickTime but crashes resolve on import. Handbrake reports no valid source on processing, and Topaz AI says error loading files. There are theories on what's amiss.
Bill?
When I've seen things that are really hard to open up and do that, it typically, in my experience, is either a munged header on the file or possibly an end of file that's missing, and it's just not loading it into video and playing it out. If you can get it open on QuickTime, the first thing I do is literally use one of the tools to screen scrape a copy of it if I needed to get to it. If it's playing, it's playable by the main system, so get it off into something else. It's really unusual. Handbrake does a lot of things, but sometimes it does miss. That's been my experience. Maybe Alex has more thoughts.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple different things that you can try to do with a file that isn't working. Handbrake might be one of them. Also drop it into compressor. So open it up in compressor and see if compressor will open it and see if it will run. Looking at it, does it open in other formats, so compressor or Final Cut. But normally I would try to put it into compressor, and if it shows up in compressor, I would try to read it out. If it doesn't, I guess the question is, you said it plays in QuickTime, so I think it'll open up in compressor. QuickTime has its own export tools there. Also, there's a program by Telestream called Switch. And Switch is kind of all the things that used to be in QuickTime. So anyway, you can open up Switch and see if it validates or not. But yeah, it sounds like you've got something that's corrupted somewhere in there.
Chris?
I was going to say the same thing. I would try everything. Media encoder, just export the QuickTime file again. Compressor is a good example. As Alex just said, there's one called Shutter Encoder, and I'm going to go, you said Telestream Switch? Is that what you said, Alex?
Switch.
Yeah, it's episode kind of in the modern era.
I'm going to be muting my mic, and I'm going to go look at that.
It is, I mean, it literally took most of the stuff. When QuickTime 7 went to QuickTime 10, Switch basically took all of those things and more. And it's kind of a great utility to kind of go in there and look at things, recompress things, clip things, that type of thing. I don't use it as much as I used to, but I definitely have it there for these kinds of problems where I try to open something up and try to figure out what's actually going on.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York writes in, what is the reasoning behind Meta no longer allowing live streaming to Facebook groups?
Meta's been reeling this in, or Facebook, I should say, has been reeling this in a little bit. I think there's some concern over copyright and over just inappropriate content as more and more eyeballs globally get turned on to them in terms of how are you moderating content and how are you protecting your users, especially protecting children. They get more and more attention and more scrutiny, and it's probably something that they just don't want to deal with. Alex?
They also don't make as much money on it. So you're asking them to, the groups aren't as profitable as the main feed, and streaming is expensive. So I think that there's also, I think that Facebook worked pretty hard, and they've kind of gotten to a point where they kind of own the group market at the moment. And so I think that they feel like for many people, the reason that they stay in Facebook is because of groups. And so I think that Facebook feels like it has leverage to make the changes that it wants to make. And they've done this in the past where they, once they feel like they have something, they tend to start removing some of the stuff that costs them money to do. Because I think live streaming into groups has been, very successful. It does open. I think that they've made a calculated decision that nobody else has groups that they can stream into. And so it's not really, this isn't as popular anywhere else. And so people are going to be kind of stuck there, I think. But I think that after their algorithms changed in 2017, I think the groups is the only place that people were using Facebook Live heavily. Like at least in all my clients kind of, other than being in Facebook, unless they were partnered with Facebook and Facebook was paying for it, almost all of them dropped the platform from a streaming perspective. So I know people do it, but it's the problem really is that when you look at average view time on Facebook, it is just, it's soul crushing. So you get big numbers and people think that they're there, but this is all like empty calories, and so like the average view time on Facebook, if you get above 45 seconds, you're doing great. You might get to, an eternity on Facebook is 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes is like maybe the longest average view time I've seen on any live stream on Facebook. And it's because the feed that brings you in pulls you back out again, and so it just really isn't, and so it's, and it's interesting that they take it out, but they're tightening a lot of groups. It may be a security issue. I think some of it might be an expense issue of it doesn't really pay off for them to do it into groups. But I think that, and I don't think they have any competition right now. I think the groups, they've figured out how to do groups. They spent the last, 8 years working on it. And I think that they probably have people where they need them for now.
I'd like to thank our producers for asking the questions. We've had some great questions so far this hour. If you'd like to submit some of your own, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. And that's where you can go 24/7 to submit your questions, or you can hit the QR code right there. We also have a system called Makana that you can log into. So once you're in Makana, you can vote on questions up and down, so that way we know how to structure the show, and also live chat with the other producers. But let's keep going with more questions.
Don Foltz in Stallings Grove, Pennsylvania writes in, a client wants to shoot some footage, sorry, lost my place, on a green screen and key it later in post. They use a Blackmagic 6K cinema camera. Is it better to shoot ProRes 4K or Blackmagic Raw 6K for this? Which LUT would you use in post?
Alex?
Yeah, I would shoot it in the 6K RAW, and you want to shoot at the lowest compression you can. So shoot at 6K RAW, and if you can do 3x, if you have the speed within whatever your storage capacity is to do it. So you want the lowest compression there. You want the most data you can get. You always want to be a fiend for data in this area. So try to get the most data out of it. And then you'll make that conversion. The LUT typically in Resolve, you're going to go from the Blackmagic RAW, and you'll look at what camera you have and OS and everything else, to typically you're going to do a Rec 709. You might be doing something else that's going into a PQ space, but that would be a special case. So typically you're going to go from the Blackmagic RAW as your source, and your destination will be Rec 709 of some flavor. And so that's what you're going to go to. Now, oftentimes, what you really want to do is you might do that base conversion and then do, and CJ may be able to add to this, but you may want to do your own color correction to get it to just where you want it. And then the thing that you may want to think about with when you're doing that correction, at times we've done things where we correct for the green screen and then correct for the foreground. There's some problems with spill, so it depends on how much spill you have or whether that'll work or not. But sometimes that becomes very effective because you didn't get it quite right when you shot. Now, what I will say is that what you want to do is if you're going to do it in Rec 709, you're going to end up doing the key in Rec 709 typically. And so what you want to do is you want to view it as Rec 709, put it into your scopes as Rec 709 so that you can see what you're going to end up with what you're going to key, because you're not keying that raw footage. You're just making sure you capture it. And what you want is, if you think about your red levels. So you have, let's say here, you have red levels, you have your green level, hopefully higher than your red level if you're doing a green screen, and then you have your blue levels, and the distance, and really it won't be like squares like this. It'll be whatever this is, right? And so you'll have your green that's doing the same thing, and then and so what you want to do is your goal for the green screen, wherever the green screen is that you want your green in a perfect world, you want your green to be 40 points between, away from your red and the blue. So in a perfect world, that's what you get. It is hard to get that. The only place you really get that is when you do a green on green green screen. And that is very dangerous, but very effective. So it's, so if you do green on green, you're going to get 60 points, 80 points difference, sometimes 90 points difference between the red and the green. Now, you want that green screen to be sitting at about a 70% on your green record. And if you do green on green, you'll have the blue and the red will be at like 10%. The problem with that is there's so much green coming off of that your subject needs to be at least 10 feet from the green screen, or they'll get so much bleed that it won't work. You also, for the lights, need to flag those lights off. They cannot have any direct contact with your subject to make that work. But what you will get is a very, very pure green that is extremely easy to key and will get every hair on the person when you capture it at something that's going to get you close to a 444. So that's those are some of the advantages there. When you capture in ProRes, you're going to, because I don't think that the Blackmagic camera truly captures in 444. If it does, then you can capture there, but I don't know if it's a true 444. But when you capture 422, remember that you've now thrown away half of your color. And so what you're going to end up with is stair-stepping that goes down the side at full res. Now at 6K, if you're going back down to 1080p or something like that, it may be okay. But you have to know that you're subsampling if you're doing any kind of 422, you're going to be subsampling your color. And so that's going to it means you're basically keying half of resolution. And so anyway, so those are things to think about as you go there.
Another thing that I would look at when you do get into post, if you're using Resolve, you can not only just apply a LUT, but you can also do what's called a color space transform. And that's where you can take that Blackmagic RAW footage at whatever gamma you shot at, whether it was Gen 5 film, Gen 5 video, and then transform that into an intermediate color space and then out Rec 709. You always want to make sure, if you are going to build a node tree, that if you take it into an intermediate color space, you turn it back into 709 at the very end of the chain. That way what you're looking at and what you're keying is always within the limits. Go ahead, Bill.
Practical thing, you have a dual native ISO camera, 400 and 3200. You want to lock it on 400. There's no reason to have any extra gain in your signal recorded to the card if you're shooting green screen. So lock your camera to 400 native ISO.
Next question.
Jamie Edwards in Atlanta writes in, does the Apple Vision Pro support native playback of 360-degree videos captured with Insta360 and Theta devices? If not, can you suggest a third-party app?
Alex?
It does not support it yet, and all the third-party apps seem to be much lower resolution. So there are some third-party apps out there. If you search for them, you'll get 3 or 4 of them. I haven't found any that I think are displaying the information at full resolution. So I think that they all seem very soft or pixelated. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening there, but I don't think people have figured that one quite out yet. But I do expect that to be something that by June we should be able to see 360s.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, a video clip licensed for $1,000 ends up on 1.4 billion PCs and the creator only gets $500. Is the moral of the story, think before you license? And he includes the cbc.ca link.
Bill?
I don't think that's the story. For me, this is the lottery story, right? Everybody thinks that because you see people win, there's a realistic chance of winning for yourself. And that's kind of not how the math works a little bit. What I'd say about this, I've had 100 clients come to me and say, we want to make this video and we want it to go viral. And it is impossible to do that. The market, what's happening afterwards decides what goes viral. You can try to put in the things that you've seen in the past that make things go viral. Absolutely no guarantee that anything is going to catch fire like this. So you can't really say that it's worth way more than that, because when it was done in advance of that virality taking hold, it probably wasn't worth more than $500 that you were paid for it. It's only gathering that value because of a quirk of nature, a moment that you caught. So I don't think there's ever going to be a way to
Bill,
do this.
I'll actually just step in just a second. This was, I agree with what you're saying about viral videos. This one, Microsoft actually built it into the Windows 11 HDR test. So it just ships with Windows now. So it's
that's a different thing. That's a licensing thing of a specific, you're going into a giant system that generates a river of money. And then I think it's perfectly fair for the creator to ask to be compensated relative to that. But that's not how this usually happens. So that's just my thought.
It looks like
if I
this
had a
guy
nickel for every client.
Well, it looks like this guy put his stuff up on a stock video site, and then Microsoft licensed it. But it seems like the license terms were pretty broad, in that the highest level was probably $500, and here this guy now is seeing his or her footage. I'm not sure who shot it actually. Seeing their footage just everywhere. Chris?
Yeah, so this is business. Somebody looked at their own work and they valued it for $1,000 and they entered into that agreement. I'd also like to point out that this is not new to Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft did this. So the Windows, I can't remember which flavor of Windows, Courtney. It was the beautiful blue sky and the beautiful green hill that became the desktop that was on 1 billion computers all over the world. Microsoft bought that from a stock photography site. They then went one step further and bought it out so nobody else could buy it. They entered into some sort of a deal with the photographer, the creator, or it's actually right up here in the North Bay area. But that is business. If you think your video is worth $1,000, you can't complain later that somebody did that. I mean, get over it. Or
Alex.
Well, I think the person that's upset is the band. So the photographer was like, "Well, I licensed it, and it was their footage." Obviously, it is a process of contracts, as Chris said. The band didn't say that it was work for hire. I'm sure that they probably didn't have any money, and so they were just happy that this guy was willing to shoot a video for them. And probably he said, "Well, I want to be able to use it for some other thing." And so I don't think that this is probably a source of all the things that are wrong in the world. This is a source of artists not, with not good lawyers. And so when I deal a lot with artists with good lawyers, and a lot of back and forth about what we can and can't do with their footage, and everything is, and so there's what the artist, if the artist was paying the guy to shoot his video, which I bet you he wasn't, if they were paying them to do that, my guess is that the photographer owns that right, owns the copyright to it. And I think that because it's behind him, he probably doesn't have a likeness argument in that area. And there's it's not like this was worth 1.4 billion PC distribution. Microsoft just would have used a different clip. Like they just, they just wouldn't have used your clip. If you were smart as the artist, you would do something that would let people know that you were take advantage of the fact that you got a bunch of exposure and leverage that into success, doing something that was really cool, remaking it, talking about it, putting it up online, getting viral that way, because 1.4 billion people have seen your video now. So you want to leverage the opportunity. You don't want, complaining about it is kind of like, okay, and so, but I think Chris is right that there's just this is a contractual thing. Everybody, I don't think there's anybody that missed any legal loops here. And it would have been completely different if they had just signed a more restrictive contract.
Next question.
Alton Christensen in New York writes in, are there any good options that do the same thing the old and barely supported Google Cardboard app to look at stereo photos and video the same way? And he has the arvr.google.com old link.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, there still are apps, and of course, the Google Cardboard technology doesn't expire unless the cardboard starts to break down a little bit, But I did find this 3D VR stereo viewer that is still in the Google Play Store and available. It doesn't have a lot of good ratings. It does allow you to zoom in on the pictures. But I also stumbled across something else, which is which is an Intel RealSense stereo vision camera that works like a webcam. I think the AIM RealSense Depth D405 camera with cable for $285 there. I think the purpose of that is for robotic vision and stereo depth information for machine design, machine interaction for, mechanical operations of robotics. But it could be a stereo webcam that you could send out, put on your own machine and send out to all those Apple Vision Pro people that are out there searching for content to look at in stereo video.
Alex?
Yeah, one thing that I was kind of surprised at is that Apple isn't doing stereo stills. I thought that was a really fascinating thing, because I think that a lot of us would love to, go back in time and when we used to look at stereo images, and we have stereo video, but we don't have stereo stills at high res. And I think that that's just a real missing piece of this. It'll be really interesting to see. I thought Cardboard was great when Google came out with it, and I loved playing with it. And now that we have cameras that will shoot it from our phone, it's amazing that, we're not able to get something better. And I think that it may be a limitation of the computational photography. I think one of the problems that Apple has is that the computational photography is they have two lenses that are different, and they have to merge them together to make them look the same, rather than two identical lenses, preferably at interaxial. The interaxial distance matches interocular distance. I think if Apple figured that out, and I think that the way to do that, if you look at one of these phones, the way to do that, in my opinion, is, let's see if I can cover my face here, is to have a lens here and then over on the other side. That is actually, if you look at it, very close to interaxial distance or interocular distance. And so I think that Apple may, at some point, put another lens or set of lenses on the other corner, and then that will give us something that's much more stereo than what we have there. But we'll see.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York writes in, I am looking into OpenAI's bundle of software for content creation and just playing around for fun. What recommendations does the panel have for which capabilities to check out first?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I would always go out of the mindset of playing around with it for fun, because it'll always just been just a fun tool. If you've got a real problem, a real issue, or real question that you've got, go to Explore GPTs and type in there what you're looking for. Say like I've got like a problem with the A10 Mini, and type in there A10 Mini, and you will then really see a list of people who have built a GPT to help answer that specific question. So it's first mindset of actually if you've got an issue, a problem, or something you want solved, try it with that. It's then when you kind of then take the next step of it, playing with it, to actually seeing, actually, this can actually help within my workflow. So if you've got a workflow issue, type that issue in, go to Explore GPTs, type that in, and then there would be someone who built a GPT for it. If not, you could build one yourself, not that difficult to do, to help solve that problem. I think that's the first step that I would take in seeing how this could be useful for you rather than just something to play around with.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, if you just want to play around with OpenAI stuff, one good way is for free. That's the problem these days. Everyone's trying to monetize it now, and everything goes for a subscription these days to get your feet wet. But if you just want to play around and see what it can do, although it won't be as fast as a subscription-based, download the Edge browser on whatever platform you're on and play with that, because Copilot, which is Microsoft's branded version of GPT-4, I think it uses 4 now, and it does image generation. It has different levels of interaction that you can set it for more creative, more precise, 3 different levels of creativity that are easily switchable, and it works with both text input and image input and image output and text output, and it's pretty versatile, and it's free, so you can kind of dip your feet into what can be created. It's not near as good as Midjourney, granted that, because it uses DALL-E 2 for image generation. But it is free, and it is available cross-platform, so that's a way to dip your feet in without having to expend any money.
And as we all got started with these generative AI tools, it felt like we were kind of figuring out, well, how do we write the right prompt, and how do we get it to output the thing? And we're standing on our head and twisting ourselves in knots to say the right words in the right order, because you had this fear of getting something wrong or a hallucination because your scope was so wide. What these GPTs or with these custom GPTs that Ken was talking about allow us to do is really focus that energy into a specific, whether I downloaded one the other day for Sous Chef, and was comparing it to my normal cooking one, and I'm not 100% comfortable and sold on that the Sous Chef is the only way to go. But then when you go into the other things like DALL-E, or how to make better diagrams and charts, or how to create these, eventually we're going to be able to create with Sora. That's where we're finally starting to harness, how do we let, quote, normal people who don't want to spend, a year trying to figure out how to write just the right prompt, take advantage of these tools. Next question.
Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida writes in, can you recommend options for desk mounting computer monitors?
Go ahead, Bill.
There are so many now, and I generally classify them in a couple of areas, penetrative and non-penetrative, which means that are you going to drill into your desk surface in order to mount things? That can be one of the most stable, but remember, if your desk itself isn't particularly stable, then anything you do on your desk, including writing and anything tapping, can be transmitted to things. The other version, non-penetrative, means that you can clamp things on. And I'm going to cut to my overhead camera here. You can see I have a lot of things hung off my desk here. And I have probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different clamps on the second tier of my desk that hold most of my monitors, except my laptop monitor. I also have my prompter monitor kind of set up on the top shelf. I love that arrangement, but you may not have that. If not, then you can think about things like having poles that go floor to ceiling behind or around your desk. That can be a really stable way to mount additional monitors, additional screens, and other things like lights that do not shake when you interact with the stuff on your desk. So those are kind of like the big 3 for me. I do highly recommend you don't drill first. Don't think, oh, that's where my monitor stand should be, so I'm going to drill through my desk to do it, because I can't tell you the number of times I thought that's where it should go. And later on, I realized, oh, gosh, it would be so much better if it was on the other side. And now I have a hole I have to deal with that's no longer useful. So I like clamping or pole mounting things at first until you decide what your rig's going to be, then make it more permanent.
Alex?
Yeah, the ones that I've used for the last couple of years, at least 3 or 4 years, and I think I purchased, the last one I purchased was in 2021, but I've been using them since then, is these Hawanu ones. And so these are, as Bill was talking about, non-penetrative, and I have these clamped onto things all the time. This one is the one that I have. You can get one that's a little less expensive if you know your monitors are going to be lighter. And in fact, mine are probably actually overbuilt but what they have is they have a nice, there is a little thing on the elbows that lets you loosen or tighten the upper area. So this area right here, I have right here, there's a little place where I can turn it and loosen it and tighten it so that I can really adjust it. It holds 2 monitors. It holds them well. It's not super expensive. And I have like 4 of them on my desk. And so I don't know if they're I will say that I think that the Amazon ones are better, and that the monitors in motion are the best. But the monitors in motion ones are, $600 or something like that, or $800, and the Amazon ones are about $250 or $300, and then these ones are much less expensive. And I know that I've chosen just to do something less expensive because I don't need them to be more powerful. But those are the ones that I use, and I love them. I love using arms. I love my monitors on arms so that I can swing them around. I'm constantly, like, as soon as this show ends, because I'm doing graymatter.show with Michael Krasny, I'll swing a bunch of these monitors over to me into another place. I'll move a bunch of things for him. And so everything gets reconfigured so that Michael has what he needs. And I can switch my studio to me being a producer from me being the guest in about 30 minutes.
Courtney?
Yeah, I've liked these Omicron. They're very similar to the one that Alex just showed. They're about $65. This is a dual monitor mount for VESA. And the neat thing about this, it supports 2 monitors from a fairly narrow base. It's a clamp on, so you got to make sure that your table has a big enough lip to accommodate it. And the bottom part doesn't really go up and down, but the top part is spring-loaded, so it supports up to 17.6 pounds for each particular arm of that monitor. So you got to make sure your screens are less than 32 inches and, will fit on there for the 2. But it's only $65, so it's a pretty good deal, I think, for a dual monitor adjustable level mount where you can move them up and down and move them at free will to accommodate your setup.
Chris?
I'm a little sad for you guys being afraid of drilling holes in wood. That's what I like doing. Hey, so Alex, I'm curious about the arms that you use. Is there enough flexibility if you had 2 of them like close to each other, mounted, clamping to your thing? Is there enough flexibility in them that you could make a perfect quad of monitors? Like these could be over here and these could be like vertically stacked?
It would be hard to do the ones that I showed, but there are other versions of what they have that it's really easy to do that with. So
yeah.
I have another style of that over here where it's a pole, and you can basically put arm after arm after arm on top of that pole, and then you can definitely put them into a grid. The ones that I have with the bigger arms, you can set ones side by side. I don't think I could set one of them over the far one easily.
Right.
So that would be the only place where I'd feel limited. But otherwise, I can, and I don't, I for whatever reason, I used to build them all in grids. So there'd be 2 rows, a lower row and an upper row. At one point, a long time ago, they used to call my desk the array because there were 16 monitors that went around it. And I've gotten down to 8, and they're all in a different. I've cut down. I've lost weight. Dieting, exercise, and I've gotten down to 8 monitors of different sizes. Most of them are almost all 24-inch monitors, and they're almost all 1080p. And that has to do with oftentimes a lot of the computers are running as many monitors as they can run, and I find the performance to be better at 1080, and they're pretty far away. So making them 4K doesn't help me.
I just wanted to say one other thing. I just adopted VESA mounting since we started this show, probably like 2 years ago. My desk now looks like a porcupine, and yet I love it. And it's one of these things where you shouldn't be afraid of it. And I know that a lot of times when us people in this, digital electronic world have to interface with the physical world of, drilling and mounting and bears on I know a lot of people that are like, I don't know how to do that. It's not that hard. Just buy one of the clampy ones. It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
I don't even know where the stands are for most of my monitors. I mean, they stay in the box. I pull the monitor out and they stay in the box, and sometimes they get thrown away with the box because I forget about them. But I never use the stands. I mean, the idea of I have one on stands right in front of me here, just because it sat there. But outside of that, they all go on Visa mounts, and I won't buy a monitor without a Visa mount. Like it's a Visa mount and a standard IEC C13, receptacle for power and an HDMI are the three things that I will not buy a monitor without.
Bill?
I'm a card-carrying monitor anonymous because they keep growing. I will say I have moved one thing. I no longer have Visa mounts as a lock for me because these IPS monitors are so thin and so light now that I find that clamp holders and smaller things, I used to use all Mafer clamps, those kind of big, heavy ones to mount to the edge of the deck that's a part of my desk. I've moved away from those to the small rigger kind of smaller clamps because the monitors are so light and require so little rigging. I mean, it's got one USB-C connection that does both power and signal, and I just don't have to hang as much stuff anymore. So these are great because specifically, if I have to go out and edit somewhere else, these pack up in my laptop bag. They're so thin and so light that it's really easy to travel with them.
Alex?
And I admit my thing is mostly modularity. I just want the same thing for everything. So I know that all of my things have it. They generally all have the same screw, same screws, same things. By the way, one way to change your life when it comes to using Visa mounts is you can order the screws that go into them with little dials on them, little plastic dials on the back of them, so that you can do it by hand. You buy them. You see them once. And then you'll buy hundreds of them and just put them in a bag to make sure that you never have to use a screwdriver with your monitors again, because you don't have to make them that tight. You can just tighten them up until they're hand tight, and it's totally fine. That's the other secret sauce to making sure that you can mount those monitors. But I would highly recommend, again, the Visa mounts. I think that the problem with the ones that don't have Visa mounts is that you end up trying to figure that out. That's another calculation that I have to make. Whereas if I know that it's that everything I buy will fit onto it.
Courtney?
Yeah, and those are called thumb screws, Alex, by the way. If you do want to use,
I couldn't think of the name. I couldn't think of the name on the fly. It's early in the morning. I haven't had all the coffee that I normally have.
But I was going to say sorry, I'm halfway there. One good thing that these things do is, especially these dual monitor mounts, is they free up horizontal desk space, which is at a premium in all of our cases. The place where you can set something down on top of a desk becomes at a premium as you become more cluttered and cluttered. And this gets the monitors off, and it gives you one single point here where you're attaching to your desk. It doesn't take up a very big footprint, about the size of the coffee cup over here. And now you have a lot more desk space free to use to slide your sandwich tray or your Cheetos box, anything over there. And so they're very useful as that. And as far as the VESA mount goes, make sure that the VESA mount matches what your monitors have on them. They're usually 75 by 75 or 100 by 100 millimeters. Those are in millimeters. So check those out. And the screws are usually 4 millimeter or 6 millimeter to go in. They're usually metric.
Next question.
Coming in from a QR code, Gabriela Chassal Mestiera in Sault Ste. Marie writes in, thanks for answers about shorts. I was talking about ISOs of panelists feeling very creepy to my friends, even in Snapshot. We felt that if it was the tiny Supersource from the show trimmed to a vertical cut with voices would be nicer this way.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, we're still playing with them. so we'll figure it out. I think that their heads are too big. We're probably going to make the Fenwick framer a little bit smaller to try to get heads that are a little bit smaller in the frame to make it look better. We are going to play with it. The problem really is that we do see higher performance with 9x16 if it's you cover the video all the way down. So if you start cutting stuff off, it starts to become you get less views. But being creepily too large might be less views as well. So we're kind of, there's a kind of a balance of trying to figure out how we do the show and how we deliver those things. Probably not going to use the Supersource, but we are thinking about putting one thing that we were looking at is putting all of the text that pops up, in one place and then framing the person above that. So it still kind of feels like it fills it, but it lets us make the heads a little bit smaller. So, but you're going to see us play with it. If you've seen anything that we do in office hours, it's pretty rough when we start because we just start doing it. And then we start to refine. And a year from now, I'm sure that they will be amazing.
All right. Thanks for that. That'll take us to the top of the first hour. We've got more questions after the break. Just a reminder, tomorrow we have another episode of Q&A for Saturday. Sunday is introspection. But after the show on Saturday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, we've got the new volunteer meeting. If you want to find out how you can help us, check it out. And welcome back to the second hour. Let's go ahead and keep going through your questions. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, the FCC created new rules to enable more efficient use of spectrum for wireless mics. Will this require new mics or just reprogramming of frequencies? And it includes the mixonline.com article.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I'm not sure because this was just announced yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to look at, and since it was just announced yesterday as a rule from the FCC, I'm not sure how it will affect the global manufacture of wireless mics that are designed to operate in multiple countries, since FCC only governs those of us here in the United States, but it does tend to lead the industry in adoption of technology because of its rules and limits. I haven't read all of it. It's called WMAS, Wireless Microphone Wireless Multi-Channel Audio Systems, WMAS. So if you can look at that up it operates under licensed and unlicensed parts of the FCC rules. So it's in the TV bands in the 600 megahertz range. That's where a lot of wireless mics are now, or where they used to be, all professional wireless mics. This is not the DJI or the consumer types, but the licensed and unlicensed wireless mics that we use today. So it should be pretty easy for manufacturers to adopt some type of frequency hopping that adheres to this particular use case. I haven't read it yet, so I'm not sure exactly how the technology will have to change to accommodate it. So something to look at. It just came out yesterday, so,
Alex?
Check it out.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to take anything away from the mics that we have already. I think it is adding availability of frequency spectrum within a certain set of rules, because it does appear that NAB and others have come out in favor of it. So I don't think we're in a position where they're taking something away. They're giving something back. And I have to say that the FCC's management of wireless for microphones is atrocious. Like, it is on the border, in my opinion, of criminal. Because taking away, what they did is they invalidated hundreds of millions of dollars of wireless frequencies, hundreds of millions of dollars of hardware that was sold to people who were using it, and they did that for selling off that frequency for profit. And all they had to do was add to that a little waiver that said, there's another $300 million or $400 million or $500 million on top of the billions that you're spending on this frequency that will be included to pay for people to be able to walk in with their electrosonic and say, I have this frequency, and be able to buy another one. That's all they had to do and everyone would have been fine with that. But what they did, and this is the epitome of, someone's got an open mic. This is what they have is this is the epitome of a insider network, where the FCC was too chummy with wireless providers that were making this deal, and it really undermines people's belief in the larger government's ability to take care of the actual users of frequencies, because it was horrendous in the United States, just a horrendous choice. And I think that, so I think that maybe they're trying to figure out how to put a Band-Aid on top of it, but it's a big wound and a little Band-Aid, for what they did.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois writes in, curious inquiry, what is the history behind the in another world type voice method we hear in promos? Some films, this seems appropriate, but find in engrained in other kinds of advertising, a voice method many would not take seriously in conversation.
We all miss Don LaFontaine. Go ahead, Alex.
So many things in our life are based on just what we were doing. Something worked. Hollywood is very superstitious about somebody did something and then it was really successful. Let's keep doing that, like whatever that is. And so movies that had this voice in them in the trailers became very successful. And people, no one wants to take anything out of the mix, because you don't want to be the person that experimented with something and have it fail, because then it'll be all your fault. And so, so I think that in Hollywood, it has very little to do with, science oftentimes with these things. And it's just something worked, and we're just going to keep doing that over and over again until it stops working. You can see that with Marvel, we'll do so much of it because it's so great, and then people get tired of it, and then they move on to something else, and they'll do a reboot or do everything else, and then it'll all be new again, and they'll do that again. So I think that is the I think that this was a thing. I don't think we hear it as much as we used to. I think it pretty much was every movie trailer for some of our childhood, or some part of our life, but I don't hear it nearly as much. But really, a lot of Hollywood has to do with repetition of things that we know worked, so that we're not blamed for it not working.
Go ahead, Bill.
Having worked in the voiceover industry for a long time, I will tell you, I agree 100% with what Alex said. Don LaFontaine did those originally out of Los Angeles, and it became a thing, and everybody did them. There are also kind of waves through the voiceover industry. For a while, they wanted big-time announcer sound. Then all of a sudden, you wanted just the guy next door, and those of us who were working had to change our styles to match what the audience wanted to hear. And now it's kind of a hybrid, and I would imagine that the AI move into a lot of this generative stuff will change that. If you want to have some fun with that, there's a film on YouTube called Five Guys in a Limo. That's Don LaFontaine in the back of the limo driving back and forth, earning gazillions of dollars by going studio to studio and doing 10 or 15. He's got a limo driver. This was his life. He would get up. They drive him to one studio, he'd do voiceovers, drive him to another studios, and he was kind of one of the standard setters. And him and four other guys in the limo on their way to the Oscars or the Emmys, I can't remember what it was, is this video. It's fun to watch.
And go ahead, Courtney.
In a world where voiceovers and trailers have dominated the industry, I blame CGI. You know why? Because with the advent of photorealistic CGI, almost every tentpole movie became an apocalyptic story. And those apocalyptic stories are best described in voiceovers and promos by the voice of doom and the long vocal fry. And that's what gave Don LaFontaine a career. And he'd have a harder time making money now, because that, thankfully, there's hopefully a lot less dooming. The Marvels have, managed to perpetuate the apocalyptic storyline, but hopefully we're getting down to more story-driven films than things just blowing up and falling down and the world coming to an end.
Next question.
Paul Walhoofs in Hot Springs, Arkansas writes in, can Runway AI, an applied AI research company, shape the next era of art, entertainment, and human creativity, as they boldly claim on their website?
Go ahead, Ken.
I had to log back into my account because we try and experiment with all of these services, and there's a lot of them. We couldn't find any proper commercial use for it. It was the best of the best at the time, but it still wasn't good enough for us for commercial use. And now with the announcement of Sora, they're going to have a hard time keeping up, because the game has changed since yesterday's announcement. We're in a very different space now looking forward. But no, I don't think so. When we looked at it, we couldn't find a commercial use for it. It wasn't good enough quality for us at the time.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the places that we may see the AI stuff work pretty well is a lot of the stuff that includes match moving. So I think that there's I don't think it's Runway, but others that are doing where you can sit there and you do a motion and it removes you from that scene and puts a robot in or puts something else in or other things in. I think that the one thing that's missing right now that, it's all or nothing, like it's all AI or nothing. And we are getting better. There's definitely things where you can now hand it people and say, I want it to look like that person, but in this environment. I want to do these things here. And one of the challenges we have right now, though, is like with cameras is really being, and I think that even what we saw with Sora and people talked about it is you can tell it what shot you want and it'll get you something pretty close. But if you're trying to say, I want you to be here and then I want you to move over here and then I want to do this thing, it's not where AI is yet. So I do think that folks have some opportunities in that area there. I will say that OpenAI and Midjourney and some of the others, we are starting to see that, in every rush, and this is why investors throw tons of money into it, whether it was the oil or the railroads or the internet or telecommunications, whatever it is, you see this huge rush, everyone throws a bunch of money into it, and then there's a couple winners. And we're getting pretty close to the winners. So we're not, I think we've got another 2 or 3 years, and then after that, it'll be 5 companies that do this or 3 companies that do it, and there won't be as many, So I think that everyone's rushing for it. A lot of them will buy each other up. That's usually what happens. There'll be a bunch of acquisitions and pulling in, but you're going to start to see that acquisition stuff happen. And within 5 years, it'll be down to, 3 or 4 major companies. The same way we had lots of search engines, and then we had Google, and a couple other things. So anyway, I think that that's kind of the nature of it. People act like it's new, but that's been the way it's been for a long time. It just happens faster now because money and technology is more portable than it was before.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just one thing I'd like to add: the big change that we've seen, because we're starting to develop them, are actually the large language models that you run locally. Some of these we've been experimenting with, and they are is what's going to change in terms of it being. So I disagree. I think there's going to be 1 or 2 big players. I think the locally running large language models, because of Apple Silicon, or if you've got a really big PC with the NVIDIA cards in them, but we're using Apple Silicon in ours. We are really surprised at the quality of what they are producing and how some of the open source models are actually really ramping up the quality and stuff that they're doing. And I think that's we're going to be seeing some of those models being you can run locally, and what you can do locally is going to be I think quite a big movement moving forward.
Next question.
Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida writes in, anyone with experience enabling sign language interpretation view in Zoom, is this different than just bringing in ASL interpreter and spotlighting them in addition to the speaker?
Alex?
Yeah, I believe that we've only seen it a little bit. We haven't used it as much because we do it in a different production process. We bring those ASL interpreters in and we design a show around it, the way kind of like what we do with office hours. And so so that's kind of how we approach that model. But the ASL, my understanding is the ASL interpreter gives them, I believe it's either I think it either is a floating window or it's a separate window, but it is definitely a much better experience. If you are looking for ASL and you're using the vanilla Zoom, you should absolutely be using this feature as opposed to just spotlighting them next to it. It is definitely designed, and I know we've gotten some feedback from folks that do ASL that it's a pretty good implementation.
And Andy Carluccio did chime in the chat. It is a resizable window and a much better experience than just a multi-pin or a spotlight. Go ahead, Chris.
There was a Google event a year or 2 ago where they, because it was Google and YouTube, they had a user interface in the YouTube where you could, I think it was you click something on screen even, and it was like you were running the control room, and it took the program, scaled it back to like 75%, had a little artwork, had a little box for the ASL person. And it was literally, you got to control when you saw it and didn't see it. It was really cool. I don't think I've seen it since.
Next question.
Aaron Kuth writes in from St. Louis, Missouri. Any updated recommendations for real-time captioning services?
Alex?
The leader in this is AI Media. AI Media, they bought the hardware EEG. So EEG is what that standard is, but AI Media also has pass-through services that you can stream basically to them, and they'll stream back out for you to another place, and they'll add those real-time into it. There are some other players, but we haven't really seen anybody do it at the level. So if you're looking for trying to find something less expensive, I don't know what that answer is. If you're looking for what the industry standard is, AI Media and EEG are the standard. They have for what we use them for is that you can have an EEG hardware, and then you tie iCap to their cloud-based AI. So you can either, with iCap, you can attach it to a person who's a stenographer who is sitting there typing away, or you can attach it to AI, and it will do all that processing, deliver it back, put it into the line 23 or line 21 of your SDI signal, and push it out. And so it's re-embedding all of that. But there's all kinds of other ways of making that work. You can point it towards HTTP inputs. You can point it towards a variety of other things. And so CART systems, that type of thing. But AI Media / EEG is the industry standard for that. I don't see that. The market is, I don't see that market being shaken up very soon, because most of the other people that are doing AI are, they're not doing it at a professional level, like with the professional hardware interfaces. And so I think that makes it challenging.
And James in the chat mentioned streamtext.net. Do you have any experience with that one, Alex?
Yeah, streamtext.net is, you still have to supply it. I mean, my understanding, unless they've changed, and they may have changed it, but streamtext.net is something that we use oftentimes as an intermediate. So what we use streamtext for is CART systems, and so you can make it full screen, and you can put it up on a screen, and you can send to streamtext, and then oftentimes we can send to streamtext and then send to somewhere else. So for instance, if you were using the HTTP input into YouTube, you might send it to streamtext. Streamtext will then pass it to YouTube as an HTTP input. And there's other things that can do that as well, but but streamtext is a way station for our stuff. Now, they may have added AI to it, and I haven't looked at it for a while, but that's, again, a web version of that thing. I think that when we're talking about professional grade, I would say that the market is 95% AI Media EEG right now. Like, I don't think that it's at a professional grade. I think as you're fiddling with stuff, I mean, you may do it. And as it's streamtext, someone's going to do it, or they're going to do more and more real time. And there are services out there, especially for translation, that you feed it, you do the English texts, you feed it in, it's actually using the Google engine to generate, as many languages as you want, and can even turn those back into voices if you need to. And so I will say that the real-time captioning and then also real-time text to voice is about to explode. So this is going to change a lot. I'm a big fan. The captioning is good. I'm a big fan, when you can, is to provide language appropriate audio. And the reason for that is that it's easier if you want people to watch what your show is and listen to what you're saying, oftentimes that is going to be more effective. Otherwise, they're spending the whole time reading the text down below, and they're not looking at what you're actually showing them. So it's less video, if you talk a lot or have something that's very technical. So we try to get it back in, and we're still using human interpreters for most of that. But I think that all of us know that this thing's going to change, as we move forward, because I think you're going to be able to produce 60 languages in real time, with the face, in 5 years from now. We saw this from the World Economic Forum with the Argentinian prime minister or president was talking, and they replayed it, and it changed it's his voice. It is in English, and his mouth is moving correctly. Now, that was probably done over 30 hours or something like that. It's probably not a real-time process, but it's coming. Like, that's just processing. And so I think that everyone's going to be able to see it. It's very Star Trek-y, where everyone's going to be able to see someone else speaking in that other language, and it's going to be in their language. Will it be as accurate? Probably. Like people will say, like it's gonna, like it's hard to keep up with. It's kind of the machines will slowly. This is the kind of thing that the machine will slowly do better than a human being. Just because it's a relatively mechanical process of what they're doing. And so I think if I was a captioner, I would be a little worried. I think that in a legal sense, you still want a human being to do it because they're accountable. But I think when you look at these types of things, you're going to see this market is going to explode when it comes to AI in the next 5 to 10 years.
Next question.
Coming in from a QR code, Gabriela Chusau Mestiera in Sault Marie writes, and I'm very confused by the answers to my second try asking about HDR problems with apps like Disney, YouTube, Prime, etc. on Apple TV. Good to stand by your answers, but already said had tried those things before I asked it and it didn't work. Please help.
Alex?
Yeah, we can give you the answers based on the data that we have. So here's what we need from you to help you, hopefully, is exactly what apps aren't working, what apps are working, what model, make and model. Well, what's the model of the Apple TV that you're using? What is the operating system version? What is the TV that you're using, and is there an AVR between the TV and the Apple TV, and what is the make and model of that? So those are all the things that we would need to go any further with that. We've given you the answer that we have based on the information that you've given us.
And the one piece of information that we often forget to ask about in this situation is what is the level of HDMI cable that you're using? How long are they, and what's the HDMI number? Because sometimes that's the link that ties it all together. I was in fits over a projector once, and now it was the cable. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, Broadcom has ended free licenses for VMware ESXi and many talk of a skills gap in the future as fewer are able to learn the VMware stack. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Alex.
Supporting a pipeline is an important thing. And companies who are smart at this, I mean, if you look at the heaviest or the biggest view of this, look at Apple's, all of their school programs to teach kids to code. That is, Apple's not being altruistic. They need more coders. So they they'll seed the entire market so they can pick out the ones that they need. And so getting kids coding at 10 is a supply issue that they're handling. Grow with Google is a supply. They are solving a supply problem. They don't care if you go to college anymore. They want to start training you when you're in high school and have you available so that you can take an entry level job at $60,000 a year or $80,000 a year working for Google. But they are solving supply issues. And so if companies are serious about, the hard part is that what that is that's the difference between farming and hunting and gathering. And we've talked about this in the past. People who are just doing interviews and trying to pull people in, that's hunting and gathering. And that's how everybody starts. But civilizations are built on farming. When you see these companies going out and building education programs and working with schools, they are seeding the entire market to make sure that they have the people that they need, 10 years or 20 years from now. And so if people, for all companies, if you think that you're worried about having not the people to do it, you need to start earlier, and build programs and partner with, K through 12 to make sure that you're getting what you need on the way out.
Next question.
Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida writes in, office hours convinced me to order a Spider X Elite colorimeter for calibrating my monitors. It arrives today. Recommendations for getting started.
Alex?
Just follow the instructions. They're pretty straightforward. It's not a hard thing to use. So you install the app, you put it on your monitor. It'll tell you exactly what to do, and you just simply the key is do follow the instructions. So it wants to have your ambient the way you normally have it. It wants to have you put it on the middle of the monitor, but you're just following the instructions as you go through that process. And so that's all you got to do. But good luck and welcome to the world of all your monitors looking the same.
And if you're doing any sort of serious color work, I would also recommend somewhere in the room, not directly at your face, maybe reflected, get a bias light, usually about 6500K, to fix your eye's reference of what white is. Because when you stare at that screen for a really long time, your eyes will start to normalize that. So having that bias light anchors you in reality. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York writes in, I use Authy as two-factor authentication for all of my accounts. Authy desktop app is being unsetted after March 24th. Only apps on the phone work. Anyone know why this is?
Alex?
Yeah, I think that they're probably losing to Microsoft and Google, which I think both have their own authenticator apps that I think most people use. I've never heard of Authy, so I think that the two authenticator apps that I think Google and Microsoft both make ones I think that are the class standards in those. If you're using a piece of software, a lot of two-factor authentication, of course. I mean, the other one right now that's really building up is going to be passkey. Passkey will be eventually used by Microsoft. It's already being used by Apple. It's coming up to speed on Google and Android. And passkey is you see a QR code and you take your phone, you point at the QR code. The phone uses biometrics to identify you, and then simply it logs you in. And so that's I think that's going to be the passkey, and they may be slowly working their way out of this because passkey will be the future. Of how we do this, because it's a biometric authentication, two-factor. It's going to be difficult to work around.
Next question.
Lo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina writes in, Google released Gemini 1.5 Pro with a 1 million plus context text length. Where does this put them in the AI wars? Is it a worthy ChatGPT competitor?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, it is in long form. It blows ChatGPT out the water. There's nothing close to this with long form. It's ChatGPT's memory is more like just a GPT. The memory that this has, you could have a conversation with it and roll out segments from it. The data sheet on this is mind-blowing. And if OpenAI, and I believe that's why OpenAI released Sora when they did, to take the steam out of the room for what Gemini announced. Google they made a rod for their own back with the kind of over-exaggeration when they first released their product. But a white paper on this, on the 10 million token length, is game-changing for large language models. Long form. Short form stuff, it's comparable with ChatGPT 4. Long form, it's a new world with how and what it can do. We forget that Google have been at this for a long time. They kind of dropped the ball because ChatGPT came up with what they did. They have been at this for a long time. What they've released, as I said, still a white paper with Gemini 1.5, is truly a game changer for large language models with long form text. The results, the data sheet on it is. I have to wait until it comes out and we have to use it. But just the pure data sheet, which is what you really need to look at when all of these announcements come out. That's why we're going to wait today. I believe Sora's data sheet's going to come out, and that's what the real detail is. The data sheet they released about Gemini 1.5 and in long form really is a massive change. And yes, it is better than ChatGPT 4 when that comes out for doing long form. Short form stuff they're presently doing, it's comparable with GTP 4, but long form, nothing comes close to what they've announced.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, Lenovo just leaked a transparent laptop, extra cool factor, and then the Twitter link.
Courtney.
I think this is a conceptual trolling picture here. Whether this is completely impractical, if it doesn't have a tactile keyboard, so it has a touchscreen keyboard, it has a transparent display, two things that are completely impractical in the real world. Of course, I see every art director on every movie getting online. We're going to get some of these. We got to have this in our latest sci-fi movie because they think that looks cool. But, the only thing it'd be practical for is in the new open office design so that you could let you spy on your coworkers while working on your spreadsheets. So you could look through the screen at your coworker. years. But other than that, I don't see any practicality involved in such a product. Imagine how you'll feel the first time you drop this onto the concrete floor.
Bill?
Shatters into a billion pieces.
I thought about all those things. I also thought about the issue at first of, if I use this, do I get fingerprints smeared all over it? I mean, even if I open the lid, is it going to leave something behind? Although then I thought for a minute, my iPad Pro, which is sitting over here, I touch it all day long, and for some reason they've managed to code it in a way that I don't get a lot of fingerprints, and it caused me to think about that. So maybe as a materials technology forward-looking thing, this has some hope for it. Maybe they're really working on these displays, and someday we will get a fingerprintless, really high-resolution, transparent thing for people who need it. I know for a teleprompter or something like that, that'd be pretty awesome. So we'll see.
Next question.
Tim Snyder in Louisville, Kentucky writes in, our event production typically utilizes 1080p at 2997. However, this coming year we have been experimenting with 1080p 5994, but when we switch, we lose camera control with the Constellation HD 4ME. Everything seems to be set up to 5994. Any thoughts?
Go ahead, Alex.
I'm going to guess a couple things. One is the return signal that you may be having may not be, the cable may not be good. 1080, there's something about 3G that is super tweaky. So 6G, 12G don't have seem to have the same problems, but 3G is a little bit tweaky, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So number one is, what are you going through to get to the cameras? Is it all Blackmagic hardware? Is that Blackmagic hardware 3G or 6G? Also look at whether the ATEM is set to SDI-A or SDI-B. So Blackmagic released a whole bunch of stuff at SDI-B. It doesn't interface with traditional hardware very well, so that there's an SDI-A that you can put it, because Blackmagic got ahead of the spec and built their stuff before the spec was complete, and everyone else came out with something else. So anyway, so that you may want to look at what that looks like. I have not used the Constellation HD. I've used the 8K, and I can definitely tell you that 1080p 5994 works with the Constellation 8K, and with every other switcher that uses that does 1080p, I have not had a problem controlling with 5994 at 1080p. So if the cameras accept it, and if the switcher accepts it, so I think that it could be something in the cable. It could be the SDI-A versus B, and it could be something else that's going through that might be stripping that off. But it should work.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, many front of house and monitor engineers that tour with classic consoles like the Midas XL4 mention hands-on experience of analog mixing as an advantage. Are there any vendors offering a similar knob per function experience in the digital world?
Bill?
I know the control surface manufacturers want to do that, and I understand this. I will say, here's what I'm going to hark back to. For years, 30 years, I used computer mouses to control computers, all my computers. Since my first Mac in 1984, I used a mouse and a mouse and a mouse and a mouse. The time when I suddenly lost access to my main system because it wasn't GPU compatible with what I was going to, I switched over to a laptop, and I started frustrated because I was trying to learn touchpad computing without a mouse. And it was really difficult to get my mind out of that. I kept reaching to the side because it was so ingrained in my muscle memory. Eventually, I switched over, and now I'm really uncomfortable touching a mouse, and I want to keep my hands in the same place, and I feel like I'm much more efficient with multi-gestures and the pad. My point in this is that until you traditionally condition your brain to move to a new thing, it always feels like you're being hampered really badly when you're forced to change into an experience in the tactile world that you are not conditioned to. I mean, it's how piano players, I think, operate. They don't think about which keys. They just tactily play the music, and you want to get behind the touch and get into what you're trying to express. So if these new technologies come up, and if an engineer is working on something tactile and that's all they know, I would be a little concerned with that, because we think everything is kind of heading toward this idea of touch pads, touch screens. Touch is just becoming so much more a virtual thing rather than an analog hardware thing, that if I didn't feel comfortable with trackpads now, I would feel a little bit left behind. That's just me. I understand many people want their mouse, and they should have that as long as they want it. But boy, that change was good for me, not bad for me, and it was a tough one.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of tactile that's available on a digital board. I would never go back to an analog board. And I've owned lots of them. I've owned, I don't know, 30 or 40 analog boards and about the same number of digital boards. I would never go back to the limitations of an analog board just so I have tactile over the compressor. I think that the amount of routing and control that you have in a digital board is so much better than an analog board that I wouldn't go back. And I do believe in tactile. Like, I don't believe in just control screens. But generally, a lot of the higher end digital boards are going to let you have a screen and you can tweak those things. You don't usually, someone's going to probably correct me in the chat, but when I'm doing the show, or when somebody's doing the show and they need the tactile controls, usually in most good digital boards, those tactile controls are available to the faders and to a lot of the trims and to other things they've defined. These are the things that I need to do in real time, and that's when I need the tactile to really work. When I'm playing with the screen, my experience has been, or when people are playing with the screen, you're tweaking things in rehearsal. You're tweaking things as you set up. You're tweaking everything to get it just right. Then you have an enormous depth of control there to work with. In a place that I just don't think you have in the analog boards. But I think that you get that mix. So if you're looking at the higher end boards, I think that you have those tools there, the tools that you need. And I think that folks who have been around for a long time oftentimes have trouble with new things. So I think so you're going to get those things, and they can justify them just like they justify things like 24p. But it doesn't, just because people are doing it doesn't mean it's the future.
Courtney?
I think it comes down to, mixers have been around for a long time. Muscle memory is, being used to controlling with your fingers each on a slider and being able to control a mix just by muscle memory is, okay, this is the toms on the drum, and so you notice that as you're listening, you can do it without looking at the board. A lot of the digital consoles now still have, individual faders, usually flying faders for tactile interaction with a digital board, but they'll usually have a separate channel strip that's just for adjusting all the parametric EQ, all the aux-ins, everything else other than the fader levels for each individual channel. So you have to get used to taking your fingers off the controls and, because it works off, anytime you touch the fader, it selects that particular channel and then routes all the sub-controls to that separate fader strip that lets you adjust the EQ, et cetera, et cetera. All the finer controls of that particular channel then become operable on one set of knobs. So it depends on which fader you're touching, switches to that particular channel. So you have to retrain your muscle memory to do that. But I think, as Alex said, going back to analog with all the problems of interconnection of individual strips to an analog mixer and noise and all the other reasons, you probably want to not look back to the analog world for control of a mixer situation.
Chris?
This was, I totally understand what Douglas is talking about. Having a knob to dive for one thing, where one knob only does one thing and it will always do that thing every time you touch it, it's very attractive. The reason it won't happen with the digital consoles is purely cost. This was my last analog console that I owned. I love this thing. 48 mono inputs, 4 stereo inputs, 8 VCAs down the center. It was awesome. Every knob did one thing. And it was heavy. It was like, 350 pounds, and we moved it all the time, but it was a glorious desk to sit at.
Next question.
Penny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois writes in, should an earlier edition M1 Mac Mini provide different significant performance from a newer model? Looking at some pre-owned gear.
Ken?
Yeah, it depends on what you're using it for. I have the original M1s up to the M2s, M3s. We've got them all here, and M1 for 80%, 90% of our tasks still works fine. It's a dream of a machine, especially if you're coming from Intel. chips to the M1. It's an amazing machine. So it depends on what you're doing, what your use case is, but for the majority of tasks, the original M1 is still magnificently fast.
Next question.
Pedro Gonzalez writes in, can you show me something new in Keynote?
Go ahead, Jason.
All right. Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
We get two.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Alex has got one
for
too.
The price of one.
Okay, so I'll give you the shift drag versus shift option drag, and I'll let Alex take it from there. So if you're going to be duplicating things, it's option drag. So you can very quickly duplicate things, select a lot of them, and then duplicate them again with an option. Then, of course, you can take them, Control or Command G to group. I think I just did that wrong. And then you can scale them proportionately if you keep holding the Shift key.
Awesome. Alex?
Okay, so mine is a little bit different. So this is going to become the competition between everybody. Like it's the Keynote off. Anyway, so here's Keynote here. One of the things that you might want to have here. So I might go into my shapes here. Some of the shapes that I brought in. Let's say I have a satellite truck, and so I'm going to say, oh, this is a satellite truck. Of course, I'm going to hold down my Option key and make it a little bit bigger, centered around where it is. I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to talk about it needing to go to let's say a satellite. So there we go. This is a very common one for me. And then it's going to, let's say, go down to we'll go into the shape, and I might have, we'll say another satellite truck. And so we'll do this. I might go into the arrange and say I want to flip this horizontally so that the satellite truck is on the other side because it's receiving the signal, right? And so I have this. So I have this here now. What you'll be tempted to do is you'll go into the shape and you'll go up to the top and you'll do an arrow. So you'll do this arrow here and you'll go up and you'll kind of get it here. And this is it's a little bit of a process to kind of get this right in the right place. I don't do that. I select this object and this object, and you'll see this little thing called connect. And this isn't normally in it. I will talk about another way of rebuilding this, but you can get connect. And it connects it to. Okay, so now it has a connection between the two of them here. And then I connect this one, and I connect this one. This is a little like OmniGraffle. I connect this to this, and there you go. So I have these two. Now, the nice thing about doing it this way is that I can grab those, but I can move it around, right? Because it's actually connected.
No way.
To that, and I can do this, and I can select these, and we'll make them a little thicker. Now, the one mystery here is always which way the arrow is going to show up, and I can't tell you. I keep on thinking I have it right, but okay, it worked out that time. But sometimes it doesn't turn out the way I expect it to. So anyway, so you have that there. Now I can also, so there I have my little satellite here, and I can move this around to where I want, and I've got this little, you don't have a ton of control over it, but you've got this little, it's kind of a B-spline that you can kind of grab onto, and move it around. Now the other thing I can do, of course, is I can grab these two. And I can go into my animate and go add effect. And there's an effect here called line draw. And it will do it with the little point that's there. Now, so it has a little arrow that's there, which I think is quite pleasing. And so I can grab these and I can, put them in the right order. I can say I want this one to be, I can attach it to this one and say I want you to do this, after that build instead of on a click. And so I can say now, if I want to preview it, it'll say, okay, it goes up to the satellite and it comes down from the satellite. And that's all in one click. So I don't have to double click on those things as you go through there. But as I'm working and I put something in, I want to change it. I can just grab this and move it. And all that animation and everything else is all going to stay the same. And that's just really, and if you want to, the way you might do this is you might grab these and you would go in and say, I want to pop them in. So they go pop, pop. Now they're going to be in the wrong order, right? So I can select this one. Note that it shows you which one you selected. When I select this, it shows you this one's the selected, or I can grab this. If I select away, if I grab it, it shows you which one is there. So I can say, I want this one to be here, and I want this one to be here and the satellite in between. I can grab these and put them above so that happened before the connection line. And then I can also say, I want these to be connected to the truck, and I want them to be with the previous build, but I want them to delay just a little bit. right? And so now when I preview the whole thing, by the way, I'll take these. Well, I'll leave this there. So I'll go. So now what I have is if I play it out here, I'll go like these are. See, by adding that little bit of delay, it has it it appears in the order that you wanted it to. So if I go back, you'll see just a little delay, so they don't all come at the same time, but I don't have to click them either. And then I can click, this is going to go up to here, and then this is going to come down to there. And so that's that's a quick way to throw little examples together when you're trying to show people how some kind of process is going to work. So,
and the winner is Alex Lindsay in this round. Nice try.
It's on, Lindsay. Next time.
There we go. So anyway, hopefully that helps. It really does. A lot of it is that as you start to build these, you want to make them as, these things all just add a little bit of fit and finish, and it makes it much easier. And what you want to think about is, what do I actually need to click, or what can I rehearse? And I can just click it and it'll do all the things that I want it to do. And by adding those little bits and pieces into it, it makes it work nicer.
And then just as one more help me enrich your life tip, on Mac OS, if you're thinking, man, Alex did that really cool thing where he connected the lines together and you don't know what menu it's in, or you don't have it in your menu bar, every single program has a menu bar in the Mac, right? Every single program has a help menu. You can search the help menu for what the menu items are and quickly find exactly where that lives. And then you can be extra special like Alex, right-click on that toolbar and then hit Customize Toolbar. Go ahead, Alex.
I should have showed that. So if you want to do this, you hold down the Option key or the Control key, click on it. You'll see Customize Toolbar.
We're looking at you still, Alex.
Oh,
and you're not presenting.
Sorry, we'll do that again. And so you'll have, if you right click or control click on the bar, you'll see that I customize toolbar, and that's where you'll see all the options. And I've got some spacers in here, and then I have the different things that I may want in there. So I can drag, flip horizontal, which I used earlier. I'm like, I use this all the time. And I can, add those to it or other things like that. So this is where you customize that toolbar so that it has what you want there. So there you go.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, many are returning their Vision Pros because of it being uncomfortable to wear. Would the in-store demo be good enough judge for user comfort? And he includes a link to The Verge.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Maybe, because in-store comfort, they fit you for your own Vision Pro in the store, and they give you a light seal that is supposedly designed to fit your face. One of the reasons listed in the Verge article is light seal, so that problem could be addressed with the proper fitting at the store versus getting it at home, ordering it home with doing the measurement over the internet. I think the reason a lot of them are being returned have really nothing to do with the reasons that are listed in there, which is light seal, eye strain, because your eye strain, using your eyes to select stuff as opposed to a mouse or pointing in the air at something, touch activation. The heaviness of being on your head too much, the technology is not quite there yet because a lot of people have complained about the camera resolution to generate the AR is not quite high enough to be real world workable, to work with, to be able to see stuff through the cameras that you can focus on and operate without having to take the headset off. Spatial computing is too lonely because it isolates you with the rest of the world. It's too expensive, of course. And a lot of people just wanted to try it out, which I think is the main reason a lot of people are returning it, because they wanted to get a lot of clicks on their YouTube channel. So they wanted to be the first ones to get out a review of the Vision Pro before anyone else, collect the things, and then they could return it, collect the clicks and then return it. So I think it was just kind of a greed in that respect. And I think a lot of people are discovering that, there's not a lot of practical things other than watching movies on an airplane that you can use it for that justify a $3,500 experience. And so that's why I think a lot of them are coming back. But good news, if you do want to get one, you can probably find some cheaper ones at as reverbs on the Apple Store very soon. They're probably coming to a store near you. One other thing I want to say is maybe they've overlooked, and maybe they've got it in development, is used for quadriplegics. For accessibility, it could become very useful if they could work out the ability to use your gaze to select something and double blink to click. That I haven't seen that yet, but that could be a good use for such a device in a vertical market.
Ken?
Yeah, just before I answer your question, just realize that any of these news articles, anytime you put a news article that, dinging Apple, you get more views and clicks, and you see that on YouTube all the time. It's frankly, it's quite boring, but anyway, you write a negative story about Apple and you get clicks. So I wouldn't take as read what The Verge is saying about this. But anyway, to answer your question, Apple have a great return policy. So no, I wouldn't just take the 20 minutes or half an hour you have in the store wearing it. You can take it home, use it for a length of time, and then you'll have a much better judge of whether it's right for you, and then you can return it.
Alex?
To answer the question specifically, the 20 minutes is probably not enough. In the first 20 minutes of using it, I actually felt it to be really uncomfortable. And even in the first couple hours, I couldn't quite figure out, I couldn't settle into a space that I liked on my face. And so I felt like it was dragging on my face. I felt like it was doing a lot of things. And I will say that after multiple days of use, I got very comfortable with it. And so now I just throw them on. I throw it on all the time. And I just kind of, the biggest thing is me deciding I take my glasses off. I'm getting my lenses. I just had to get new prescriptions for them so that I could just throw it on. So I'm still got to put my contacts in when I want to wear it. But I have found it to be very comfortable and not really problematic in that area. And I do use it a fair bit. And I think that the biggest problem that I have is that I forget that it's I'm doing stuff and I'm just kind of in the zone of doing stuff, and I forget that it's been like hours that I've had it on. I think that Mark Zuckerberg, of course, had his comment on it. I use the Meta the Quest every day, so I still have the Quest and I still use it. I exercise in it. It's one of my many exercises. I get bored really easily, and I find that Supernatural is a lot of fun, and I've gotten kind of addicted to Supernatural, and so I use it. And I think that his statements are not invalid. I think that they're accurate to some degree. But I think it's the difference between Apple users and others, or Apple development and everyone else. What Apple has figured out is this last little bit of, we were talking about taste, and also the integration. I will say that this is a real payoff. I tweeted this out this morning because I just noticed it. The real payoff for me is the fact that I have bought 600 plus movies on Apple for my Apple TV, and I have 600 panoramas that I shot with my iPhone, and I have all these things that I've shot over the last decade. And so for an Apple user, there's a huge payoff. If you're someone who doesn't want to be caught up in the Apple ecosystem, and you've done a little bit of stuff over here, and you don't really use messages, and you don't use notes because you're using Evernote, and then you buy your movies on Roku and everything else, I don't know if the Apple headset is as good for you as it is for someone like me. I use some other things, but my core life lives inside of the Apple ecosystem. The headset is a huge payoff, because all the things that you normally use in a regular way are all just there and available to you, and that's really sticky. Because I put on the Quest and I play Robo Recall, and then I play Supernatural, and then I take it off. I don't spend a lot of time exploring it, because I don't find most of the interfaces or most of the other stuff to be particularly compelling. And I think I think that when you have 3 million developers who already know how to do most of the coding that they need to, and already have apps that can run in these things, I just think that the Apple ecosystem is going to do really well in this environment, in a way that, I haven't developed for the headset yet, but I have developed for the Quest, and it's arduous. So I think that's going to be the difference. But I think that's what Zuckerberg tends to miss, is it's that final little edge that Apple brings to it, where everything just kind of works and everything is all kind of integrated and it fits into all the other things that you're doing. And if you don't buy into that, you're going to want to send the headset back. Like, you're not going to, if you're not an Apple user, this is really an Apple device for Apple users. And there's a lot of them out there. Is it the whole world? Absolutely not. And so there's going to be a lot of people but if you take it as a unit on its own and you're going to put it on your head and make a decision on its own, is this working? You're not going to want to keep it. If you are an Apple user that uses all the Apple stuff, that drank all the Kool-Aid and uses the whole stack, it's an incredible device that ties all those things in. So it just depends on who you are. And I think Apple's betting on the fact that there's probably 50 million people who are probably in, at least, I'm being very conservative, that are completely in the Apple ecosystem, that buy their movies from Apple, that use all the Apple products and everything else because they just don't want to bother with the other stuff. And so that 50 million is all the sales they're going to get for the next 10 years. Because they can't make them any faster than that. So I think that Apple's in a pretty good position. And sure, some people are going to send it back.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York writes in, I have some old computers, Macs and PCs sitting around that could possibly be given new life using Linux OS in production, like live stream monitoring, typing in Zoom chats, NDI Studio Monitor. Any other ideas?
Alex?
Yeah, that's actually a lot of what I use older computers for. Like this Telestrator is some very old iMac or something like that, but I can draw on it and so on and so forth. Things that don't require it. So things like music servers, being able to display just web pages that need to be up so that I don't want to use a high performance machine on, but I want to have availability of those things. Those are great ways to use smaller PCs like the Melees. I've got them because of Courtney. It's all his fault, little PCs, and as well as older. My favorite is Mac Minis, and I love buying Mac Minis because they can be packed up in little spaces and they last seemingly forever. And I just keep on having them do simpler and simpler things.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think really there's diminishing returns of using older, big, desktop PCs for running Linux to do something when you can get something as small and light and as using a whole lot less power to do the same thing. This little Melee PC runs Windows 11 Pro. And you can run anything on Windows 11 Pro. You don't have to find the Linux versions of something to do whatever you need to do. And it has HDMI out and network in and everything you need. Right here and there about $200. So, there's diminishing returns on utilizing these old PCs. They're subject to breakdown. They're past their prime. You got to worry about spinning disks dying and power going on and off and all the problems that you have with keeping an older PC running. I think you just retire them. That's what I've done, and move along to something newer, compactor, and using a lot less power.
Next question.
Idris Haji in Fairfax, Virginia writes in, what has your experience been when using a Wacom tablet for annotating and drawing? I'm looking to purchase a Wacom Pro for math faculty who annotate his PowerPoints using the Windows touchscreen on the laptop, which is now broken.
Go ahead, Ken.
You didn't state whether it's the model because there's Wacom Pros which don't have a monitor screen in, and Wacom Pros do. I have both. The one without the screen, I've used one. As soon as I got one with the screen, yeah, really, really, it totally changed on how I use it. So yes, if it's the Wacom Pro with the built-in screen so that you're seeing what you're drawing on there, then yes, it's a good choice.
Speaking of annotating and drawing, Alex?
Yeah, I love using the Wacom tablet for that. So I've been using, obviously, a Wacom tablet, a Cintiq, and now what's called a Wacom One. So the Wacom One is I think they realized there was a huge market that was building up underneath their lowest cost version of the Cintiq, and so they released the Wacom One where they took out some of the buttons, but it does exactly what I needed to do for annotation. It's about $380 or $400 or something like that. So it's much less expensive than the entry-level Cintiq, which has some more sensitivity, but for this kind of thing, you don't need it. And so I will say that I've tested quite a few tablets, and I definitely like the Wacom better than the other options. I find that the fit and finish is a little better, durability is better, and sensitivity works better, and just the performance is better overall. So I would definitely recommend the Wacom One for these types of things. I would never go back ever to like annotating on a screen that people can see. That's like cave drawing, like you're turning your back to your audience. Like, why would you do that? Like, that is serious, like old fashioned thinking. Really, you want to be able to talk and be able to just draw while you're still looking at the person that you're talking to. There's not really any reason to do the whole that. I think that's the problem that Microsoft had, is that at some point people who are forward thinking enough to think about a monitor instead of a whiteboard also were forward thinking that this is weird. Like, why are we continuing to take the past and insert it into the future? And so I think that, whiteboard, I would never go back to a whiteboard either, or a blackboard, or anything else that I have to turn my back to my audience. And so I think that for that, the Wacom tablet is very, 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 very effective, at doing what we're talking about.
Next question.
Hey, Schultz in Los Angeles writes in, is anyone using no-code databases for inventory, staff management, project management, or the like? Airtable, Monday, Notion, SmartSuite, etc.
Go ahead, Alex.
I have to admit, when we've done this, this is old-fashioned, but the only one that's really worked for me in the past has been a local copy of FileMaker. So I know that there's a lot of these on these ones, but when we've done all these things, we've tested other things, and we've had, we have some kind of internet issue, we have something else, and again, the FileMaker one is a really easy one to work with, and I know that that's old-fashioned, but I don't have as much. I know a lot of people that we've worked with have used Airtable. So Airtable has been the one that's probably the most popular of what we see. But I will say that I find that we're always dealing with some kind of online issue with Airtable, like enough that I just go, I don't know. It's much easier to share. In the same way that I use numbers when I'm doing spreadsheets on my computer, and I still use Google Sheets when I'm interacting with anybody else. And so I think it's the same thing. That interaction is really powerful. If I'm only going to need it locally, then I'm still using FileMaker.
And think about bringing this question back for a Monday. We have usually a more business-focused panel on that has a lot of experience with these kind of tools. So that's always fun. Anyhow, what a great Friday. There's sometimes on this show where it feels like, man, we get to talk about the bleeding edge of what's new and what's changing our world, and it's just a pleasure. Wanted a couple thank yous. Thank you to our audience for asking such great questions today, not only on Sora, but on all sorts of different topics. Thank you to the panel for being here and bringing all of your insight and perspective. Your life experience enriches everybody. And thank you to our crew on the back end for keeping all this show running, for cutting the show, for getting these questions in here, for helping us structure it. It's an absolute pleasure. For the Tlaloc Traversal today, we traveled 29,000 miles. That's 46,000 kilometers, which is 228 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in after hours.
In a world where bananas were scale.
Bananas with scale.
With scale.
Scales
Ken,
bananas.
Ken, you have to come back more often. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Ken.
I will once I finish my. I only came on because of the whole AI announcement, because my studio is in a. I'm apologize for the.
It still looks great.
But it's it
looks good. More, please. More, please.
More, please.
Yeah, good to have you on.
Oh,
all right. See you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
happy trails.
Chris.
Yes.
I just want to vouch for the little. First of all, I put holes in everything, and then I just put like a corkboard fabric over it. But the pole for the monitor does a really nice job. That's how I have these floating around.
Yeah, my desk totally looks like a porcupine now. And it does have a few spare holes from where I moved stuff, but